second community Q&A on the schematic design for the middle school project. These sessions lead up to a planned vote in mid-July that will set a maximum cap for the project and before it moves to its next two design phases, which will happen over the next year. The school board does not intend to vote on whether to go forward or not until after the state budget next year, when we know whether we will receive building aid or not. We have about a 15 to 20 minute presentation, and then we will open it up for questions going to about 8 o'clock. We'll ask that if you asked questions last week, you let other people have an opportunity to go first. I'll turn it over to the architects from HMFH, Hallie and Bobby.
Thank you.
Yep. I am Holly Miller with HMFH, and I am going to update you on where we are in the process. Let's see, can we go to the next slide? Oh, great. Great. So we just completed, can everybody hear me okay? Okay. We just completed schematic design, and we had a schematic design estimate completed. We had two schematic design estimates. One was done by Harvey Construction, and another was done by an independent estimator. We then spent about a week reconciling those two estimates. So the numbers that you see tonight are based on those reconciled numbers between Harvey and our cost estimator. So we're at the end of schematic design, and the goal is to set, as Pam mentioned, a project budget so we can move into design development. Design development will last about 6 months, and then we'll move on to construction documents. And in the construction document phase, we're developing drawings that the contractor can use to build the building with. The schedule that you see on the screen here has been developed to coincide with the state building aid funding cycle. So we are working towards a January 26th construction start. So I'm going to briefly walk you through the current design of the building. Just to reiterate, the design of the building has been developed based on a lot of input. There were visioning sessions in 2017 and again in 2021. We've had many meetings with faculty, staff, and students over the last 2 years. So there's been a lot of input. There are also multiple committees and a building committee that was developed. We've been meeting with a programming working group that has representatives from the city to develop the program for the building. So I'm going to walk you through the design. So you can see in the lower right-hand corner the edge of Millbrook Broken Ground School. So the proposed site is accessed from Portsmouth Street, which is to the south of the page here at the bottom of the page. There's a long driveway from Portsmouth Street up to a parent pickup drop-off area in front of the school. That long driveway will keep parent traffic off of Portsmouth Street, so that's a very long road that can support parents queuing to drop off students. Bus access is coming from the east side of the site, and we're trying to keep the bus and parent drop-off separate to create a safer environment for the students. There are 4 athletic fields that are shown to the north of the school. There's a multi-purpose game field. There's a practice field with a track around it, and there is a baseball and a softball field. And there are also 2 basketball courts. So moving on to the design, the school is a three-story building. It's been designed to support the middle school teaming model, and there are 3 team clusters per grade, and then there are 3 grades in the building. So the academic spaces are to the south, and to the north are all of the large public spaces, which can be closed off from the academic wing after hours and on the weekend. The base design has a 900-seat auditorium, a 5,000 square foot multi-purpose PE room, spaces for band, orchestra, chorus, and music theory. And there are also a wood shop and food tech space on the ground floor for hands-on learning opportunities. The second floor has a large 9,000 square foot gymnasium, a large media center, and robotics makerspace on this floor. Let's see. The third floor has 3 art classrooms, classrooms for world languages and multiple language learners. There's an outdoor classroom and a greenhouse. The other working group that was established that has residents of Concord, as part of the group, is a sustainability working group. We met with the sustainability working group 4 times throughout this process, and they developed a list of priorities for the project, which are listed on the left, so you can see sort of the 4 main categories of priorities. And then on the right are some of the strategies that we are using within the building to support those priorities that were developed by the Sustainability Working Group. So, we're looking to build a high-performance school that minimizes its impact on the environment, supports the health and well-being of the students, faculty, staff, and community at large, is a resilient building, and also supports connections to nature.
Thank you, Holly. So as Holly mentioned, the cost estimates have now been reconciled. So I just want to go over the low and the high end costs and why we're here tonight. The low end is around $136 million, and the high end is around $166 million. The reason why there's a delta is because we looked at the cost drivers of the project, and we asked the cost estimators to break those out of the project. And I'm going to go through some of those here in a minute. But those cost drivers are what I believe the school board is looking for feedback from the audience tonight in terms of what should be in the project and what should not be in the project. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jack to first talk about the tax impact before I go into those drivers.
Okay. So the potential tax impact has a range, and we did 2 scenarios. The first, I'll move out of the way of the speaker, sorry, so you don't get the feedback. Using the new middle school with the Facilities and Renovation Trust Fund that was established by the board in '05, and assuming no building aid and that Concord would pay 100%, again, use the Facility Trust Fund, with that range of 136 to 166 million, you would look at a potential tax impact, additional tax impact of 82 cents to $1.31 per thousand, or on a $350,000 home, a $287 to a $458 increase in the first year. In the second year, that bond payment would go down to from 287 to 270, or at 166 from 458 down to 438. The new middle school with the Facility Trust Fund, as well as state building aid, of which we're entitled to 40%. This would take the project down to between 87.6 million and 118 million. The additional tax impact would be between 9 cents and 59 cents per thousand. On a $350,000 home, that range would be between a $32 increase or $207 increase for 118 million. In the second year, that 32 would drop to $29, and then in the 207 would go down to 182. Okay.
Thanks, Jack. So going back to the looking at things that are in the school and options to consider potentially different choices that could be made for the school. Right now, Holly mentioned there's a 900-seat auditorium. Right now, that is the total cost of that is around $6 million. To go to a 600-seat auditorium, it would be about $4.9 million, so it's about a $1.1 million savings. And then to go down to a 450-seat auditorium, you go down to $4.2 million. Looking at the fields, as Holly mentioned, there were several fields I think the site plan showed. One of those is a multi-use play field. The base bid has it estimated at $1.3 million. That's with the synthetic turf field, which allows for multiple uses throughout the year. There's an option to reduce that synthetic turf field to a lawn, so it's basically grass, but it still has drainage and proper drainage and is graded. There's about a $500,000 savings to go from synthetic turf to straight grass. The other field is a track with a lawn in the middle. So if you can imagine that a track goes around the field, but there's also another play surface within the middle. That was always planned to be a lawn field. So the total cost of the track and lawn field is $1.6 million. And then there's a baseball and a softball field, which with Title IX go hand in hand. If you're building a new baseball, you're also building a softball and vice versa. The total cost of those two fields is around $1 million. And then we also broke out costs for the irrigation of the fields and lawns. So if you did choose to keep one field or not have another field, that cost of irrigation would go up or down based on if you wanted the irrigation in the process. And then there's also basketball services, I believe 2 courts with 4 hoops for outdoor play. That came in around $107,000. As Holly mentioned, there's a 9,000 square foot gymnasium included in the base. There is an opportunity to reduce that from 9,000 to 6,000 square feet to make it a little bit smaller. There's about a $1.2 million difference in doing that. The multi-purpose room, which is next. Thank you. Oh, thank you. There we go. The multi-purpose room right now has 5,000 square feet included in the base. And again, if you were to trim that down to around 3,000 square feet, there's around a $598,000 difference in that cost as well. The Sustainability Committee, which Holly mentioned and showed a slide on, was recently briefed on the 3 different mechanical systems that were priced. The first one being an all ground source heat pump system, which is in the base option, came in around $18.6 million. There's a hybrid ground source heat pump with supplemental boiler and chiller plant. That actually only was around $7,000 savings. So when we price these, we're looking for opportunities of first and last cost for some of these. So we price multiple options. And the third option was an all air source heat pump with supplemental boilers, and that came in around $17.6 million. So all of these will have life cycle costs, and that was presented to the Sustainability Committee, and one of their tasks was to make a recommendation in the upcoming meeting to the board. We also looked at putting roof-mounted PV, which is solar panels on the project, and also a ground-mounted canopies. The reason why we have them separated in costs is because it's obviously a little bit cheaper if you're putting it on the building versus if you're having to build the infrastructure like a carport to support it on the ground. We're pricing both because if we're looking to offset all the utility costs of the school, the total cost you're seeing between this is essentially the amount of energy we would have to produce on site to offset the energy cost of the school, which is essentially makes it what's called net zero. And that again reduces all the utility costs going forward for the school. And then finally, it's under accessibility. When we were meeting with the program committee, there was a question raised if we could look at connecting the second floor to the first floor through a ramping system. And this is currently estimating a ramp that would do that on the exterior of the building. It's about a 15-foot floor-to-floor difference, so it's a significant amount of ramping and building up of grade and structure, which is why there's a pretty significant cost to that, but that was broken out as well and will be discussed as something to potentially do for the new project.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and that is really complete. Thank you.
Great. We're going to open it up for questions now, and again, I just ask that if you ask questions at the last meeting, you let other people have a turn first, and that we try and keep our questions concise. And we'll start with Clint Close.
Good evening. My talk is going to be about 2 points. Less questions, just more suggestions. I'm a resident of Concord on View Street, and I vote in Ward 3. And I can't believe I'm going to say this number, but just finished my 38th year of teaching.
With the wonderful protection of Mamma Mia.
With that being said, I'm a current theater and film teacher within the CRTC, and I also run the CHS Drama Club. So I think we can all agree, when I was writing this down, that we're here for kids, we're here for our wallets, we're here for our city, and we're here for our future. So with that being said, I very selfishly would like to recommend that you think in the more 400 to 450 seat auditorium. However, they definitely need a stage. They definitely need curtains with legs and teasers. They need wing space, they need lighting, they need sound. They don't necessarily need a fly space, but they need the necessary grid and truss work to be able to take care of what it is that they need to do in order to do a production. And please, if you do a common space for this possibility, please, and I know this sounds weird, keep all light from the outside away from it. This is what we want. We want to be able to have a dark space to be able to control and perform. However, my other suggestion is that Concord desperately needs a full-size auditorium. I've been in the district for 33 of those 38 years, and I've been trying for 33 years to get a performing space where we don't have to go outside our school and our school district in order to perform. When you start thinking about Bow, Merrimack Valley, Oyster River, Salem, Kingswood, Nashua, Pinkerton, and all these other schools, they have a performance space right there that they can utilize. So I would suggest the thought about actually, in the same bond, renovating a project that we can work on and we'll renovate together where you're sitting right now, where we keep a lot of the existing structure and think about behind you where we can actually perform and have a stage big enough to be able to do that. A balcony, adding another 250 to 300 seats, widening the stage. We have plenty of room on both sides. We can't host anything here. We can't host state festivals. As you can see all the banners on the side, Concord High now has a very proud tradition of competitions, but we can't host anything here. We have to go to other locations. Athletic fields, for us, this is the way that theater people think, is it's kind of like, let's create sports field and a gymnasium, but we're only going to give you half a basketball court. We're only going to give you half a soccer field. This is like half an auditorium. And we have sold out shows here. We can't even fit any of our performing groups on these stages. Obviously, as a taxpayer, I won't benefit because I'll be retired by then when it's built. In addition to that, my kids won't benefit because they've already gone, they're way older. However, I've seen the impact that theater and the performing arts has on kids and families. Sometimes it's life-changing, and I would highly recommend that Concord deserves a performance space. And so I'll end with a comment that I made to the architects way back when I first started talking to them, and that was, I don't want people to have to settle for Concord. If you build something and they come, I want them to choose Concord. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have Mr. Close, Ms. Hastings actually has a question for you.
I was wondering if you thought a space like the Bank of New Hampshire Pavilion on Main Street, would
The
that
Bank of New Hampshire stage, right?
Stage,
Yep,
the stage,
yep.
yes. Would that meet the needs of a middle school?
So that only has about 296 seats. In addition, there's no wing space. So anybody who comes to see a show here, you get to see all the glitz and glitter on stage, but what you don't see is us playing Tetris backstage because we don't have the space back there. And so we can't go full out, even though we appear like we do. It is not big enough.
It's not big enough.
It's not big enough.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wendy Lapham, and let me apologize in advance if I get anyone's names wrong.
No, you actually pronounced my name right. Thank you. I know this is a meeting about the design and design questions, but I think, like many people, we still have unanswered questions that are kind of adjacent to that topic. And I just have a couple of points to share. I feel like after months of meetings and discussions and presentations, media coverage of the new middle school location, I still do not feel the Concord School Board has made a compelling case for why they voted the school on this property. As taxpayers and citizens and people who care about children, who support public education, make your case to the public so that we can have some sense of support if this is the final choice. If it's about equity for students, which I've heard that, inform us and share why that's critical for locating the school there. Do a better job of explaining why this is a more equitable choice. If it's about access, another thing that I've heard, for those who live in the Northwest Loudoun Road 393 corridor, tell us why that's important now, and then show us how this decision achieves that. I'm not against access or equity, I'm for it, but I don't think you've made your case very well to the public. And if it's about cost, this is great. You've laid out a lot of different detailed information. We appreciate that. Lots of options. Those are also great to have. But we need those facts, and we need to know how much money it's going to cost, how it will be spent, and for how many years. So I'm just begging you, please, can you convince us that this is the right choice? Give us handouts. Write some talking points. Go out, do an op-ed. More pages on your website that talk about kids. There's tons of documents and presentations, data points, facts. Where's the compelling story of how this helps kids, how this helps our community, how it makes it more equitable and accessible? I think making the case for how children in this community will be better served is the answer to getting some level of public support that isn't a petition signed now by thousands of people telling you this is the wrong decision. So I'm just saying the question is why? Can you answer that? You've not done that, and I'm asking you to do that because I think you owe us that as a school board. And second, thinking about the 20 acres of dense, beautiful forest that will be leveled to build playing fields makes me physically ill. I was just walking on those trails yesterday. I do this often. It seems absolutely irresponsible to me that this school board and our community can't come up with a better solution for where middle school children can practice sports than tearing out and tearing down more than a dozen acres of an incredible natural resource that we can never replace. How will you minimize this impact on our environment? I love public schools. I worked in public education for almost 20 years in another state. I don't have children in these schools, but I care deeply about the children in this community and the schools in this community. I signed the petition because I'm absolutely sick over the idea that destroying that beautiful piece of land is the option that we have been asked to accept. We need to think sustainably for our community and for our children. So please make your case so we have something that we can grasp about why you would go to the lengths of destroying that beautiful forest, costing the taxpayers more money, and no conversation around how this is helping kids. We need that. Thank you.
Would any board members like to respond? Ms. Campbell?
So I don't know if this makes me fortunate or not, but I was not part of the board when we voted last year. I've been in seat since January, and transparently, if I were to have voted last year, I would have voted to keep it where it is. However, I know I hear, however, since listening to this and reading Bob Cotton's op-ed that he wrote in the Concord, knowing what this is going to do for our kids, not just for today, but 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, it has fully changed my mind. Some of the things that I've heard, and everything I've heard right with the public. It's all accessible. You can see the videos, you can see what I saw. You watch the videos where I'm learning things. I think a lot of you, and I'm sorry I'm shaking, I'm nervous, but I take pages of notes because I really try to take everything in. And some of the things that I've learned, this will save us money. It is so much less disruption for the kids during this process. It's going to be a safe space for our kids in the future. This parcel of land, this area was meant to be an area for schools. So this area, that's what this was meant for. And if we build here, we're giving us the space, if we do need to grow in the future, where we don't have to go through all this again, right? We have the space. If we rebuild it, run lit, we're just delaying another problem years from now. This is a beautiful space. And as for environment, you're right. I hate it, and I'm really sorry, and I know that's not good enough, and I hate it, but when I think about our future and how we can build this school and how we can do it right for the taxpayers and for our kids to study in this gorgeous space that'll be healthy for them, emotionally, socially, it's unfortunately a tough decision that I agree with. So I'll pass this on.
Mr. Richards and then Ms. Hastings, did you have a
Sure. I want to answer your question a bit. Cost. Estimated at least $5 million less expensive for the site to build at the broken ground site than at the current existing site. Impact on kids right now, Runlet is currently built right in the middle of that property. If we try to put it in there, we will, one, go right up to where we have 3 or plus story building right in the backyards of the people who live on Springfield Street. It will also be right up 35 feet or less from where the kids are currently going to school. That will disrupt their education, and let me tell you, they're bringing in heavy machinery, steel for 4.5 years, which is a huge impact on the kids. And you can say, well, that's okay, but that's not your kids. If those are your kids, that 5 years or 4.5 years is critical. We've had testimony from a retired fire department person as well as from the safety thing. It's safer at the site that we chose. And in addition, I'll just reiterate, it is more flexible. It allows us to make this a net zero. So yes, I'm not happy about taking down the trees. Not as many trees as we took down in exit 17 for the market basket, but still, I don't like taking down trees. It's an economic trade-off, right? We have to balance the land that we have and what we use. We tried our best to minimize this. You saw the little bit of that. You're going to take that section of trees. There are hundreds and hundreds of acres beyond that will still be trails, still be accessible, and will be a part of our middle school kids' learning experience, right? Those are all key things that led to this, but one of the biggest is that $5 million right off the bat. That's $5 million we could turn into making this net zero. It's $5 million that we could turn into usable classrooms, facilities, and things for our kids. So that's where the biggest lead in my decision is. And I know some people are not favorable, don't like this choice at all. It's there. They've been able to use this. It's been a privilege they've enjoyed. I understand. But for the overall benefit of all of Concord and all of Concord's kids and all of Concord's taxpayers, this is the choice. Thank you very much.
Ms. Hastings?
This has been very difficult for me. When I voted on this originally, I voted to keep it where it is. But like Ms. Campbell, I have changed my mind. And it's through all of the studying that we've done, all of the work that we have done to see that this is the best place for our students. It offers all of the reasons that people have shared here. And I know I live in this area. This is my home. I taught at Broken Ground for 25 years. I know what that means to the people in the community, and I know the wonderful benefits that the area provides. I can remember going down to the beaver dams. They're not there. They're gone. And I hate that. I thought you had told me that, Ms. Kenny, but maybe not. Maybe I've got that wrong. They moved, okay. And hopefully they'll continue to move, because those were important things. We would go snowshoeing on the trails in the back with my class, and we would do all of the fun things. We could teach them about the history of Concord by going to the old mill spot. All of those things that our students will be able to enjoy and learn from. And you know, if we were to vote on this again now, I would vote to keep it where it is, where we want it to be, which is at broken ground, because I do believe that in the long run, it is in the best interest of all of our students, and there's not anything in this city that I care more about than our students. I don't have children in the schools anymore. I'm not working in the schools anymore, but I care, and I worry about the cost and the worry that so many of you have. But I understand you don't necessarily trust what we're doing, but there's not a person up here that joined the board to mess with the city of Concord and the residents and wants to do harm to our schools. And our city. That is not why any single person is up here working as hard as we're working 3-4 nights a week often, trying to do the right thing. And we get that you don't trust us. We get it. You've made it very clear. We're hoping by having these conversations with you that you'll understand where we're coming from and why we're making the decisions we're making. It really is. These are the people that have studied it very well. And we do think that at this point, it's the best place to go. And we need a new middle school. We can't keep putting Band-Aids on the original school. It's not healthy for the students that are there. It's not fair to the students that are there. So those would be my reasons.
Is anyone else? I can just reiterate the things that were made. You know, my son just finished Krista McAuliffe, a school I loved, and it was part of the renovations in 2012 in the new schools. And it's a wonderful little school, but it also can't grow or change to meet changing needs of the community because it's on such a tight location. And as we looked at the current site, we would be in a similar situation. In addition to the 30 feet from the backyards on Springfield Street and having to change and widen Cypress Street so buses could go down it. It would also have taken space from Abbott Downing students, and there's not a lot of field space and play space over there either. So that was one of my concerns. And we are a geographically large city, so having one of our central schools on one side of the river and the other on the other, I thought was reasonable. It wasn't the deciding factor, it was one of the factors. Last week, other members talked about this extensively, which is online as well, if you want to look at that. Gabe Cohen, is that right? Cohen?
Yes, Gabe Cohen.
Sorry.
Hello.
Hello.
I don't know if you all know me, but I'm one of the music teachers here at Concord High. I'm also the performing arts coordinator for the district. And I live in Concord. I live over on Wood Avenue. I don't know what ward I vote in. I know I voted Abbott Downing. Clint, I don't know. Well, you've been here forever. So, but I just want to, I feel like we have an opportunity here, and I just want to, like Clint, give you some suggestions and let you know kind of what we deal with here at Concord High. So as the performing arts coordinator, I mean, I can't express enough how much we need a theater at the new middle school, but also here at the high school. I think that's very important. I think you have an opportunity here to loop this into the bond and really help us out. As a high school teacher here, it's very frustrating that myself and my colleagues, we have to perform at an off-campus site. Building a theater only at the middle school and not at CHS would not change that fact. We would still have to do that. We would be asked to travel for all performance needs. I don't know if you know this, but I spent an entire concert week renting U-Haul, moving equipment, bringing it to the Capitol Center, coming back. I'm here. Concerts get done at, we get them down to an hour and a half, so 6 to 7:30? No. We end at 8, but I'm not getting home until 10:30. It's just, that's a lot, and I don't think that's going to change having a theater at the middle school, because I'm still going to have to get a U-Haul. I'm still going to have to bring all of our stuff up there. I just said all those things. So we do host things in the music department. We host the All-State Music Festival. And it's kind of embarrassing that I have to have world-renowned composers and conductors conduct in a gym. We just don't have the space here. The All-State Chorus rehearses in here, but they sit in the seats that the audience is in and the conductor's on the stage. So it's just a little, it's difficult in this space. You guys are sitting in our auditorium. You can see what it looks like. It's not ADA compliant. We have administrators who are in wheelchairs that have to either sit up there where Clint is and not come down and be able to address staff, or they have to go up this non-ADA ramp up here and hang out on the stage. Can't really get in here. I mean, it can now because they're doing some work, but during the school year, that's pretty blocked off there, you know? And I think that's just, it's important for us to think about the fact that the high school does need something as well as the middle school. If we keep ignoring the problem that we have here in the theater, it's just going to be a disservice to our students. And I hope that you guys can consider looking into also adding a theater into the bond that goes with the middle school so we can both have performance spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris O'Connor?
My name is Chris O'Connor. I live on South Street in Ward 6. Here's an idea. Why don't we just flatten White Park and build a whole new educational system there? That might be good. The statement I'm going to read is already dated, since two people who were pro-Runlet now are pro-Broken Ground, but I'm going to read it anyway. This morning I received a Facebook post from school board member Liz Boucher, that's the way the French people on the west side say it, soliciting my opinion on the middle school project. This post ended with the laughable and infuriating tag, "We are in this together." No, Mrs. Boucher, we are not in this together. The fact is that you and most of the other school board members have done everything you can to thwart the will of the people of Concord. In December, in an act of stunning arrogance and hubris, last year's school board voted to build a new middle school at the Broken Ground site, despite the vast majority of our citizens favoring the Runlet site. This was a slap in the face to the people of Concord. Now, this is the part that unfortunately is dated, but since January, this year's school board has been asked by hundreds, if not thousands, of citizens to rescind that decision and vote to build at the Runlet site. Instead, with conduct that smacks of timidity and cowardice, the school board has allowed the December vote to stand. There were five pro-Runlet school board members. I guess two of them have drunk the Kool-Aid. There were 5 pro-Runlet school board members, but they would rather betray the people of Concord. They would rather betray the people of Concord than upset the Broken Ground faction. As the old saying goes, with friends like these, who needs enemies? So, my question to the Concord School Board, as you contemplate building an insanely expensive Taj Mahal Middle School in a place where almost no one wants it built, is this: when will you listen to the people of Concord?
Thank you. Yes?
Mr. O'Connor, I just want to answer your question. There are, over several different meetings, 40 or 50 people who want us to build it at the Runlet site, not the overwhelming part of the community. I don't know if you think you speak for everyone, but that's not true, right? I have checked and asked both for months before the December 6th meeting and afterwards with the people who live and vote in my district where I was elected. Now, I'm elected in wards 1, 2, 3, and 4, but I represent everyone in the Concord community, taxpayers, and all the students. The overwhelming majority of people do not agree with you. The overwhelming majority of the people would like us to do the things that they've told me are save our money, build at the less expensive space. The engineers and all have gone through that. That is the broken ground space. Do the minimal impact on our kids, right? We don't want them getting impacted during construction or whatever. And 3, do it in the least amount of time. Build it soon. We need a new school now, is what most of the people in this community have told me. You don't agree with that, and that's fine. That is your right. But I am answering your question. So, thank you.
Thank you. Pam Wicks?
Hi. You've gotten many a letter from me, but this is the first time that I have the courage to come and speak in public since I last sat at that table. But I feel it is very important because time and time again since I was in high school, people have just not ever supported the arts. And so tonight I'm here to represent the performing arts students of the Concord School District. I am the treasurer of the Concord Schools Friends of Performing Arts. I care very deeply about our performing arts in Concord. I am not here to debate where you put the middle school. I actually do not care. What I care about is the decision has been made and you want to know whether we need an auditorium in the new middle school, and the answer is yes. Yes, we do. But guess what? We also need one here. Look at this space. This is fine. It's fine. And our kids are awesome and they make do. And some of you came to see Mamma Mia and it was phenomenal. My 2 boys were in it and I just love the students that get to perform in this inadequate space and they make do. But it is infuriating that they continually have to do that, make do. My youngest son just finished Runlet Middle School and all 3 of my kids have been performing since their days at Broken Ground in the Kids in Action program. And I am urging you where they cannot use their multi-purpose space to even have their concerts because it is not big enough. When my graduated senior, who just graduated on Saturday, was in the 4th grade, they tried to have a concert there, and we were in violation of serious fire codes. It was wall-to-wall people, we were packed in that little space, and after that moment, the remaining concerts that all 3 of my kids had at Broken Ground had to be in a gymnasium. I am tired of my performing arts students performing in gymnasiums or having to go to the Capitol Center and where we have to charge parents to be able, you want to talk about equity? We have to charge our parents so that we can afford to pay the fees for our performing arts students to perform at the Capitol Center. And I have gone through this many times in many letters to you. Build a performing arts space at Runlet and remodel the space here. And I chuckled actually when I looked at the presentation and they're talking about the auditorium at the middle school teaching music theory. There is no middle school student taking music theory, but guess what? Our high school students are taking music theory. And it would be really great if they could actually have really cool performing arts spaces to learn that stuff. My son took AP Music Theory and composed a song for the last concert of the school year, and that was like the coolest thing I've ever seen. I am constantly in the music wing watching students come into the office. Mr. Cohen, Mrs. Cowett, can I have a practice room? We have 3 really small, tiny practice rooms, and they're always booked with students wanting to just work on music, play the piano, practice their instrument. Be down here for their study halls. Be down in the music wing for their lunch. Please, please, please support our performing arts students. You do not need a 900 space auditorium at the new middle school. A space like this would be more than enough, making sure that, as Mr. Close said, that it has all the requirements of lighting, where we're not fighting with the wrestling team like we do at Runlet to perform our plays, a fall play and a musical in the spring. We need dedicated performing arts spaces for our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wicks. Jack, is there anyone else signed up over there? Linda Mead? He is not. He's gonna sign.
Okay, here.
Gib West, I'll just add you after that.
Okay, my name's Linda Mead, Ward 7. I'm going to talk about a study that was done in 2010, October 2010, called Wildlife Habitats, Natural Communities, and Rare Species Analysis for Concord, New Hampshire. I'm not sure if you're aware of this study. I don't know, anybody on the board? Anyways, it was by Dan Sperduto of Sperduto Ecological Services, and he lives in Canterbury. And he did this study, and he was looking at, he was analyzing the wildlife habitats and rare species in Concord, New Hampshire, throughout the whole Concord district. In the report, he lists and identifies conservation priorities for Concord, New Hampshire that are critical to biodiversity protection. He listed 7 ecological regions, and Broken Ground, or Turtle Town Pond, was one of the 7. You know why it's so unique? Is because it's the largest unfragmented, okay, forest that we have in this city, okay? And it's critical for large species of moose, bear, fishers, bobcats, etc. But it's also critical to something else, turtles. Did you know that? Anybody on this board? Anybody here tonight? Anybody in the audience? Did anybody know that? Critical species over there. And I'm going to tell you something. The rarest turtles are found in that region, okay? The wood turtle is one. It's state listed, state of New Hampshire listed as almost extinct, vulnerable to extinction. The Blandings turtle, state ranked. It's critically imperiled. It has the S1 designation by Fish and Game. All this you can find on the Fish and Game website, okay? Spotted turtle is another one imperiled. That's why it's called Turtle Pond Town, whatever, okay? Okay, so did you know that there's an act called, in 2023, New Hampshire Revised Statutes Title 17, Fish and Game, Chapter 12, 212A, Endangered Species Conservation Act. Okay? It talks about what you can do with land when you have endangered species or critically endangered and almost extinct species. So if we find one friggin' turtle over there, excuse my French.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. If we find one turtle over there, then the game's done. Okay? So I didn't know. My question tonight, so I'll keep this brief, is have you or anybody on this board or anybody previously done any studies, okay, environmental impact studies done by this board or anybody, any agency, and I want the names of each agency and the dates these were done, and how can the public access this data? Has any environmental protection studies been done?
Mr.
on the
Yeah,
land?
Mr. Williams or Ms. Miller, would you like to talk about the wildlife studies we've done?
Yeah, there was a wildlife study that was done. It was reviewed by the New Hampshire Fish and Game. There were no species of concern found on the site. That wildlife report has been posted on the district website since we did the site study back in from last year. So that report is under the 2023 category on the district website. So you can
Okay.
take a look at it.
Well, I'll try to access that.
Yep.
See if I can, or I'll call Fish and Game. Okay, so I'll access that and see. And has so the Environmental Protection Agency was included in this action?
Ms. Miller?
I think you have to reference the report, please. I can't speak, I can't.
You're not
I
sure.
don't have from my memory
Right,
every single
you don't
agency on
know,
there.
so you're not sure.
I don't think
but-
that's a fair assessment.
But
Okay, I'm
we
just
have
saying
met
you're
the,
not
We've done
sure.
the
I said you're not
appropriate
sure.
test, which was the endangered wildlife
but we have met the
report.
requirements.
And this was, our civil engineer fields all this, and it's a pre-site study that we do on all projects, and that report was
Okay.
completed.
I will try to access that, and if I don't find it, I'll come to one of you.
Yeah, or you can email Concord info@sau8.org, and somebody will send you the link to the study.
Okay, good. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Lisa Bodine?
It's Lisa Bodwin,
Oh,
Ward
sorry.
4. That's okay. I don't have an impassioned story or a hard-hitting question. It's sort of a get down to the numbers. I am wondering if the Sustainability Committee has done any return on investment projections for using all ground source heat pump or the hybrid system so that we know what kind of utility savings we will be facing. And it would also be nice to compare that to the prior 5 or 10 years so that we can see how that's going to take the edge off the $17 or $18 million.
Thank you. Ms. Boucher chaired that committee, working group, so she can go first.
Yes, I will try my best at that answer. Liz Boucher, I am the chair of the Sustainability.
Bring it a little closer to you.
I am the chair of the Sustainability Committee, and we did a lot of work in our last meeting on this very topic. I'm going to answer the best I can, so please jump in if I'm not getting the numbers 100%. But going back to those meetings, it is the most desirable for us as a community to get the most rebates and incentives at this time as they're available for us. One of the highest rebates would be in 100% geothermal. That would be at the higher end of 40%, which we're more likely to get that higher end of 40% given how the equipment is made, where that's sourced, versus a lower percent maybe for solar. With that 40%, if we get the higher end of that, so please correct me if I'm misspeaking on this. If we already get that 40%, that could bring our costs down from that 18. I don't have it up here here, but it could bring it down from that
Do you have that slide, Jack?
18 million. Am I
Yes,
saying this correctly?
correct.
To 11 million.
Correct, it's around that, I believe, yes.
Right, so it would save us above and beyond any of the other choices with that rebate that we could get.
And that's not energy costs,
That's not energy
tax
costs. That's
Tax
the difference of that would be the credit towards us after that project. So I can't give you the numbers of what I don't have that in front of me for what the numbers were of the current runlet use. But given that it would cost us about $11 million for that, I think if I'm correct, the annual maintenance cost, it would be about, I don't want to speak incorrectly, but like 11 years to reduce that.
To pay
I'm
back.
sorry.
To reduce the cost of the
To pay back.
actual
To
install.
pay back.
However, just to repeat my question, the cost for heating and cooling right now is at a certain level. It's probably pretty expensive because it's an energy inefficient building. It would be interesting and informative to know what has been the total cost in the past 5 years for heating and cooling, and if we use this energy efficient system, in addition to it paying for itself in 11 years, it would be good to know, is it going to lower our heating and cooling costs?
Bobby?
Yeah, I think to speak a little more to that, at the upcoming school board meeting, there'll be a more comprehensive presentation of the life cycle cost analysis, and it does take into account all those factors. The payback, which was being referenced, is when we're comparing against the 3 options, you try to see how many years of payback it would take to go to the more expensive option, because the more expensive option in this case happens to be the one that will reduce the cost the most because it'll have the lowest future energy cost. But if you're paying more upfront costs to get there, you're essentially how many years to recover those costs. But to your specific question, yes, we have the energy rates that were provided by the school, and that will be factored into that life cycle cost.
And I'm
analysis.
sorry we don't have those numbers here, but we will have them posted on our website once that presentation happens.
Correct.
Thursday?
Yes, Thursday.
Great. Gib West?
Gibb West, Ward 5, yes. So first, thank you again for taking the time to meet with folks and hear concerns. I'm going to just try to ask some fundamental questions because otherwise I might head down a road that may not be helpful. So I was looking at page 16 of the handout where we're comparing Nashua's costs to Concord's anticipated costs. When the school opens, and apparently our builders are going to work very slowly, it's going to take 5 years. I'm not sure. That seems like a really long time. But if that's true, how many students will we anticipate being in the building the first year it opens? Because you have 900 here as the number.
So the long period is because we're waiting for a state building aid, so we won't know until next year, and that's why we're going out 5 years. There is a formula for determining what size a building should be based on population studies, and it was in our building aid application. Holly, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. The population calculations actually were part of the building aid application. They were based on 2 demographic studies and also based on information that we got from the city about future development. So we arrived at the 900 student population based on those 2 demographic studies and future development that is planned for the city of Concord. So as part of that building aid application, there is a memo included in the application that outlines exactly how we got to that 900 number. That is posted on the website, and I think even the future development is listed in that memo. So I don't have it in front of me, so I can't walk you through it step by step.
So basically, the formula that you had to use anticipates that the buildings that haven't yet been built, right, I'm just hang on, that's okay. The housing that's going to be developed for people who want to move into Concord and go to school here, that's part of that anticipated getting to 900.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of different categories, but we were looking at projects that were permitted and approved. So, and then also looking at the demographic report that was done by 2 different firms.
Right.
So we had 2 different demographic studies.
Okay. So those are, I'm from the Conval School District, and our population demographics showed this, and then all of a sudden people stopped coming, and all of a sudden, So now we have lots of schools that have 50 kids in them. So I just wanted to, and I know Concord's very different than that, so I just wanted to be clear. So the other question I had about this is there's a lot of them, but for 211,000, so they've got 58 classrooms, we only have 45.
We can address that. So the Nashua School has a district special education program in the building. That's why they have more classrooms, and that's why Concord has more sort of large public spaces. Nashua has multiple middle schools, so some of those larger public spaces are in their other middle schools. But that's essentially our understanding, and I think Keith can talk to this a little bit more because he was involved in the Nashua project.
So my name is Keith Kelly. I'm Director of Pre-Construction and Planning for Harvey Construction. It's going to be a little different, so if we start looking at the first line on that last page that says cost per square foot, you have to really evaluate what are the square feet that are being built in those costs, right? So classrooms are pretty straightforward construction versus a multi-purpose room or a gymnasium or a theater for that matter. So those are what's going to drive those costs on the second line, but the programmatic portions of it are really the focus there that yes, it's cost per square foot for a middle school of similar size. That's GSF is gross square footage for those who want to know what that means. They're similar size middle schools with different programmatic elements that change costs of construction. But it really it's come up a number of times since we've been involved as the construction manager for the project in the pre-construction phase. So we felt this slide was appropriate to kind of either dispel or confirm or whatever the conversation around Nashua compared to Concord.
Okay.
Nashua also didn't get building aid, so they did not have to meet certain state requirements in terms of their building. It's less energy efficient than we're looking at and things like that as well.
So if we didn't get building aid, then we could change how we do things.
We could make different
we
decisions.
wanted
Yet
to
probably
do that.
wouldn't be worth the trade-off, but
Okay,
yeah.
no, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah,
I'm just, okay,
yeah.
okay. Fitness, we are not going to have a fitness space in the new school? I mean, we are going to have a fitness space.
You are, yeah.
We are going to, and what's
I'm not sure what that
what's
is.
a
I'll let
fitness
Holly
space?
talk about that, but the fitness space was just something that showed the differences. Again, this table was really about showing what similar and differences
Okay.
are, but we can talk about what the program pieces are.
Yeah, I don't know who's on the program committee.
I'm going to jump in.
Oh,
but
great.
That would be, and that's actually, if you have thoughts on the fitness, if you're like, absolutely not, I don't want to pay for, like, please tell us this, email us. This is, like you said, this is us listening, and if that's something you're like, nope, don't do it. So as far as the auditorium, all the things you see on here, please,
Yep.
please, thank you.
Okay.
On the
Oh.
fitness center, are you referring to the multipurpose?
No, there's two listed. One is called the multipurpose PE space, and then there's a 750 square foot space that's called fitness.
Well,
But
I know
it's
that when we were
not
talking
critical.
about those would be spaces where.
Richard, can you answer that off the top of your head? Or Holly? Holly probably knows better than.
We have to check a spreadsheet real quick. Yeah.
Jack, is there more slides?
Did Gib have another question? Do you have another question?
Yeah, I don't know. Do I have a limit?
Yeah.
I'm not editorializing. I figured this was okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So does the board, particularly those members who are new, let me phrase it that way, do we need a 900 seat? I mean, I know the high school does, because we've heard that, and I'm all for that, having been in a school with 1,200 kids with a 200-seat theater, which is still there, and that's the only one they've ever had. But do we need a 900-seat theater
Ms. Hastings?
for the middle school?
Again, as chair of the programming committee, I can tell you that we have discussed that and we've made recommendations that will be shared publicly Thursday evening. Is it all
Yeah, you
right?
can pop
But
up.
we are not recommending that. We are not recommending we are recommending the 450 seat.
Oh, bravo.
Thank you.
Well done. I think that's great. So how many fields do we need?
We have 4 now.
Okay.
We'd like to at least keep the 4 that the middle school has it currently.
Okay. And those would include on the list here on page 7? Correct. No, there's way more than 4 here.
Well, some of them were either or, I think.
Right,
You could
so-
have a
so either
field
we-
with the synthetic
Okay.
or a lawn.
Okay, all right. So that's really the only choice, but you want a multi-purpose, you want a baseball, softball, and you want a basketball surface?
Yes, that was a direct request from the students at the middle school.
Okay. Lifelong game, lifelong skill would be something like tennis, right, or pickleball, not basketball. Most of them aren't going to be pro ball players.
Most of them aren't going to be pro tennis
Sorry.
players either, but.
Mr. West.
Well, I can say it.
Mr.
You
West.
may not like it. Okay, well, I appreciate Lisa.
Middle school.
Well, and I appreciate that very much. I'm trying to gather more information so I can better suggest things, I guess for me, because I don't know all that you know, having spent as much time as you've spent studying this issue. So I guess my last, so it sounds like by Thursday we'll have some specific recommendations on what you all as committees feel is best. Okay, and then we'll have that information. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I'm trying to stick to people first who haven't spoken, who did not ask questions at last week. So Pat Dahmer, I'm not sure if there's a. I'll reiterate my apology for
Oh, that's all right. Nobody
massacring last names.
Nobody gets it right. Okay. My name is Pat Dahmy. I live in Ward 5.
Could you be closer into the?
Not tall enough.
I know.
My name's Pat Dahmy. I live in Ward 5. I am the mother of 2 children who are now adults, who went to grammar school here and the high school. Like, wow, how did that happen? But, you know, the tax impact was different, the inflation was different, and we weren't post-COVID pandemic, which I think is affecting the numbers quite a bit. And I think it's affecting the fact, you know, it's affected all of us because we're here. And I'm not sure in past years the citizenry was that active. I think it's also unfortunate that you and the taxpayers in Concord are in the position that we have to carry the burden of our school costs. Almost everything that we have locally, we pay out of pocket, get grants, I doubt it. The structure is awful, and sometimes I think everybody gets upset with each other because of the tax burden. And so I just want to say that we're coming in a very unfair and uneven position, and sometimes comparing it to other states makes no sense. I'd like to speak to a brief issue about, you know, you can't build next to a school while kids are there. My son, who's now in his 40s, was at the high school when the addition to the high school was being built. School was in session, life went on. I heard a little complaints, but I didn't see a change in his, I didn't see any acting out behavior, and I didn't see any drop in grades. I don't tolerate that well, but you know, I just think that we're making a big deal about the impact on the kids. I worry more about the educational process for the kids. I've been involved in medical healthcare for a long time, and the only thing we can measure there is how good the building is, not how good the care is. And so I would love the emphasis to be on how good is the education. The building is one thing. And I am concerned about the impact of post-COVID inflation. As a retiree on my tax burden, I want to stay in Concord. I really like Concord. But I see a number of people my age sort of fleeing to other communities where they don't have much of a school system or it doesn't matter. And I'm afraid that will not be involved in the community. They'll send their kids to private school. I'm just concerned about this community and how it's changing in this process. I'm all for education. Runlet needs to be replaced, but I'm not sure going across the river is the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex Streeter.
Hello, I'm Alex Streeter. I'm in Ward 7. I'm going to jump around just a little bit, but I'll be brief with each of them. First off, what is the term of the bond that we're asking for?
Mr. Dunn, would you like to answer that?
The board hasn't decided yet, but what's in this proposal is 30 years at 4.5%.
Okay, thanks. My next point, I was at the last meeting of the Sustainability Committee. I was just hanging out in the audience and piped up every now and then. In regards to the earlier question about total cost of ownership and what's the delta in the operating costs, I was surprised to learn that it may not actually be that much. The new school may actually require more, but there's a good reason for it. One, the main reason is that new schools, new construction, are held to higher standards for indoor heating, cooling, and air quality. It's just going to be doing more. I'm sure that the new building, as tight as it's going to be and as well insulated as it's going to be, if you were willing to let classrooms hang out at 85 degrees in May, as happens now at Rundlet, yeah, it probably would use less energy than the current school. But what we're really aiming for is a comfortable learning environment, and that requires moving around more air, taxing the heating and cooling a little bit higher system. It is the one that had, in the estimates, the lowest total cost of ownership, projected out over 20 years or thereabouts. It will be quieter, it will have lower maintenance costs because most of the equipment is inside the building and not exposed to the elements. It is the one that uses less energy now and in the future. And I think that that's an important hedge for the district against variable power costs. show of hands, who thinks that electricity is suddenly going to get less expensive over the next couple of decades? Yeah. So the system that we buy now, it's going to be continuing to run 25 years. The wells are probably good for 50 to 100 years. It is the decision that is made now should be made for the one that has the lowest energy impact. So I am all in favor of that. And then with regards to the photovoltaic options, again, I am a maximalist on this. I think that we ought to design the system that will offset 100% of the energy demand. Photovoltaics are very well suited to that because when the sun is shining, that's when you tend to have your highest demand. When there are students in the building, when you really are trying to control the heating and cooling and you want however many air turnovers per hour, and the solar panels will provide that. The option for the canopy over the carport, it is more expensive on a sort of per watt basis, but that just means that the break-even time is a little bit longer. It doesn't mean that it will never pay for itself. It might be that instead of paying for itself in 10 years, it takes 15 or maybe even 20. Well, so what? The panels will still be producing, and not just about the capital cost. What we do now with capital cost gets amortized over the life of that facility. What you are essentially doing when you are investing in solar is you are locking in a cost of electricity for the life of that system. Electricity rates here, they vary seasonally, they vary by year. Excuse me. But when you purchase a solar system, you can ballpark pretty well how much that's going to produce year on year. And over the life of the system, 25, 30 or more years, you can amortize that cost out, and you're essentially trading a fixed bond cost for a variable spot price on the market. And I think that the taxpayers, they may not actually notice it in the budget, but eventually the taxpayers may actually appreciate that we've designed and built a building that has fewer risks for ongoing expenses. And then one last thing about playing fields. You said that there are 4 at the existing school. How well are they utilized? It's in my neighborhood. I go by there. I had kids at Abbott Downing. The utilization is, shall we say, less than thorough. So I'm wondering whether 4 is the appropriate number. Could we get by with less?
Mr. Richard, do you want to talk to some of the programs at Runlet?
Yes, good evening. Jay Richard, the middle school principal. So we had a lot of conversation process. We had those fields, involved in this new project. Again, we currently do not have a softball field at Runlet Middle School. I see my kids. We have a lot of student athletes who play softball. We have a very competitive softball team at Concord High School. So it's just, again, providing things that we think will benefit our students. And again, those stem from conversations with our students in the hallways. You can see the outfit and attire that our kids come through. And again, having a public school team, like a public school softball team, provides that opportunity for all my students, not just students who might have the opportunity, their parents can cart them around or bring them places. That's not a criticism. We want those opportunities for our kids, but having a public school team, like a softball team that we currently don't have, talk about equity, that provides that opportunity for my entire school community. Our sports programs are something that I'm very proud of. Those of you that don't know, this is my first year as principal here in the Capitol, and I'm very proud. We have something for everybody. It's unique. We have 3 boys soccer teams, 3 girls soccer teams. But why do we have that? Because any kid that wants to play at Runlet Middle School is afforded the opportunity. And I can tell you right now, there's not many other school districts, if any, in this state that provide those opportunities for every child. So
We also have robust track and fields and
track and
cross-
field. I know there's conversation around the track, why do we need a track? But I'll give you an example, like our Nordic team, right? So we have very limited snow this year, so they call it dry land training. So our kids, our Nordic ski team, when there's no snow, would be using that track for a training opportunity. So just, kind of quick example, I'll go on. Our wrestling program that we're very proud of, they take anyone and everyone, 100 kids. Our cheerleading programs, lacrosse teams, we had the state champion girls lacrosse team this year, boys lacrosse.
After the school activities, Concord Little League holds practices there as well.
And I'll add one more thing. I mean, again, when we're not using these fields, they're community resources. Project that I was involved in before, we had a track, took a lot of time to make that happen, but when we did have that track, I mean, it's a community resource. People in the neighborhood would go out and use it, use the resources. It's a community resource. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Madeline Minot?
I just want to say thank you to Alex for speaking and for attending our community sustainability meetings.
Thank you. I'm here to emphasize that we really need a safe, healthy school building for our middle school students. Lead asbestos, failing HVAC, leaking roofs, bad air quality, undersized classroom, long, narrow corridors are not safe, healthy, or conducive to learning. Safe and healthy as soon as possible is my priority. I'm increasingly concerned that the voices asking you to reconsider the location vote is trying to kill this project by delay. I think that having a safe, healthy school building is more important at this point than where it's going to be located in the city. There's already been so many delays, and we need this ASAP. For those concerned about cost, the more we delay, the more the costs are going to continue to go up. Regarding the design options, my personal opinion, I do agree that 900-seat auditorium seems like maybe more than what we need, and that could probably be scaled down. I do think, though, that by moving the school away from Memorial Field, for me, that increases the importance for the school to have its own athletic fields, because we're not having that as a nearby resource. I understand that accessibility is very important, but that outdoor ramp seems like a really expensive way to achieve improved accessibility. So I encourage you to look at other options. Regarding sustainability options, I very much support making upfront capital investments to lower ongoing operating costs. However, I work in the renewable energy business, and canopy solar PV is a really expensive way of achieving that. It's a really high cost per kilowatt hour. So I don't have all the details on the possible.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I'd first like to say thank you for inviting us all here, hearing us out, everything we have to say. Also, thank you for those that were on the board in December. That was a difficult thing to do by even taking the vote. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for sticking to your guns. I don't agree with it, but that doesn't make you bad people. And the personal attacks were not warranted, and it's awful that they happened. Serving on the school board is a hard job, and thank you for doing that. Thank you. Also, I'm impressed by the music and performing arts representation we have here tonight. So as far as I'm concerned, whatever they're asking for, give it to them. I was a jock in high school, so I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm also a member or a resident of Ward 7, father of 2. My kids are 4 and 2, so they'll be attending this middle school when it's completed. I have 4 questions tonight. They involve land use regulation, off-site improvements, future planning, as well as tree clearing. Like I said, I disagree with the location, but that's not going to stop me from advocating that the new school is the best school that it could possibly be. Regarding land use regulation, the abutting properties and surrounding neighborhood are currently zoned as single-family residential and residential open space. For those that don't know, residential open space requires a minimum of 2 acres of land for 1 house. And then single-family residential, those are 1/4 acre lots for 1 house. And that's all that can be built there. There's no multifamily is allowed, no commercial space is allowed. And it is spaces available adjacent to, within a certain radius of that school board. It was spoken to earlier tonight where families that are coming in are choosing not to, families that are moving here are choosing not to send their kids to public school. And I can speak to that, that's happening. Sorry.
Your time.
Yeah. And I was a public school kid. I'm an engineer. My wife is a lawyer. A lot of our friends are very affluent, and it hurts to see that, you know, Bishop Brady and St. John's and St. Paul's are having their enrollment increase because of my circle of friends. In addition to caveats for multi-use zoning, the businesses that are gonna, you know, not do well or lose business, it's gonna be Milano's Pizza, it's gonna be Monyi, it's gonna be South Ender. The South End has the benefit of being a more established neighborhood where those restaurants and uses existed before the strict land use code came into effect. You know, McKee Square is a great area, and if that can be duplicated anywhere in that Curtisville Road, Portsmouth Street area, that would be a boon for that area. Yeah, the businesses that are gonna benefit are Burger King and Wendy's and Dunkin' and McDonald's, and I just want to ensure that the Concord that they're referring to is the school district, because I don't want this whole thing to be rehashed when the city budget is up for renewal.
Yeah,
And I also don't think that parents who have children attending the Merrimack Valley School District should have to pay for a school their kids aren't going to be attending.
Just to answer that quickly, that's
Yeah.
the Concord School District,
Okay.
which does not include Merrimack
Yes.
Valley and does not go into the city budget.
That's good to know. And then in addition to that, I would also like some assurances that any off-site improvements that are required, traffic lights, water booster pumps, which I've heard is a weird 10% agreement, but left-hand turn lanes that are going to be required are encumbered upon the school district and not deferred to the city. I think that it is important that the school district budget reflect all costs necessary for the total expenditure for the new school, and again, not be completely rehashed when there's a CIP up in the next budgets. So the school district should be treated like any other developer that comes in where a traffic study says a left-hand turn lane is required and the developer is required to provide that left-hand turn lane. The last two are future planning. I'm not from Concord. I'm an outsider. I've lived here for 7 years. And I plan on living here for a long time. And I don't want to be here 60 years from now when I'm 35, have to ensure we're not repeating the same mistakes.
So I do want to just address that the current school is not falling down. But it became an issue of the investments, you know, roofs, as we all know, if we own our own homes, need to be replaced. HVAC systems need to be replaced. State laws change. So I was not on the board yet, but when the board began this process, they looked at the cost of renovating, and there's a lot of logistical issues because of the asbestos and the lead and things that are in the building that we don't put in school buildings now. So the kids would have to go elsewhere, and then you have to retrofit a space that meets the qualifications of a school. That it cost about the same as building new, but there are things built into this. I personally hate the name, but they call them penthouses that go on top of the building to protect the HVAC equipment so that they will last, so it will last longer and extend the life of that. But as a community, we will have to continue to plan. You know, boards before this one created a facility maintenance fund, which, as well as our facility trust fund, which we've been putting money in for a number of years to help offset the cost of this project, which I think you see in some of the numbers. And it is a space that, unlike the current site, will allow us to adjust in the future if we need it. In terms of land use regulation, I do know that the city has been talking about looking at some of the zoning density. Thank God that's not our fight. This one is enough.
You could take a side.
Yes. And in terms of off-site improvements, you know, we have in what the recommended cost is for a number of those things.
The last thing regarding tree clearing seems to be a hot topic. I've seen in the past other presentations is 8 acres. Just from my own experience, I'm a site engineer, that seems small.
It's not 8
Okay.
acres.
I was going to say, is there a final number?
I think that was
And-
just the building and
Gotcha.
not the road and not the fields.
Okay.
So I think it's, I'll defer to Holly and Bobby.
Yeah,
Just
I
to
think
put it
that-
out there.
that 8 or 9 acres, we were originally looking at putting some of the fields along Portsmouth Street. So that acres was just for the building and the parking, right? So now we've looked at moving the fields sort of onto that 11 Curtisville Road parcel. So that has revised the number. I think we're at about 18, 19 acres currently. But the goal is that we want to save as many existing trees around the school as possible. And, you know, we have been trying to work that into our kind of landscape design, you know, maintaining a buffer as close to the school as possible.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Dwayne Bailey?
I'll echo what Mr. McGregor said about thanks to you, and you certainly didn't need to hear the personal attacks. I'm a little disappointed about the location because I live in Hampton Street, and I've been walking those trails since '93, fairly intimately relating to them. The access points for the trails are still there, right? There will be some access points. We didn't see them on a map. Okay, that's one of my main questions. The other one is a little creative thing. The Society of Protection of New Hampshire Forests, when they built their new headquarters, they took the timber off the land and used that within the building, quite extensively. Has anybody given any thought about taking the timber, because there's some really beautiful sentinel trees up there, either using them within the building or possibly returning the timber to site since you have a wood shop on it? If we're going to teach about sustainability, that can be part of a lesson and education program for the students to say, this wood came off of the trees that were partly here before the school was here. I would love to see that. And I think most timber and logging mills will be open to that suggestion. They'll try to get the best price they can, but I think anybody who wants to get paid for their timber is going to work a little bit with you.
Holly,
Yeah,
Bobby, do you want
just to
to
jump in, we are and have been looking into that.
Cool.
We've recently talked with a logging company that will in fact put QR codes. So if we were to expose some of the lumber, to reuse it within the school, we can expose it, and the kids will actually be able to see exactly where it was milled from, the process it went through, and all of that. So that is definitely something we are looking into.
And potentially material for the kids in shop. I like to work with wood.
Absolutely.
That's a great
And
idea.
I'm just thinking salvage. And this is just listening to the emphasis on the sports. And yes, I would like a 900-seat theater and everything to go for the theater people because, and I'm a theologian, so that's not my thing. What is my thing is the woods and a spiritual connection. Sports, so-so. I'm also a student of popular culture, and I'm a student of cultural anxieties because I have to deal with it in frontline healthcare every single day. And I'm wondering, since there's newer and newer research coming out that's more empirical, less anecdotal, about the value of the natural environment as a means of healing. And I work with healing all the time. I'm just going to invite you to challenge yourselves to go against a popular culture notion and maybe sacrifice one of those playing fields for a field experimental station designed for middle school students Maybe you get the help from the UNH Forestry Department to help set that up. As a specific learning site, you might environmental resiliency, climate resiliency. I think this is a growing field as I'm growing more aware of it. And instead of healthcare, I might have gone into that. But I'm concerned about where are we developing our culture for 40, 50 years down the road? The people who are going to graduate from high school, might have talked me into a sport in middle school. You could have talked me out in the woods where I was, and I was interested in that. So just an invitation to maybe challenge popular notions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I actually ask a question? I'm sorry. First of all, what was your name again?
Dwayne Bailey.
I hadn't thought of any of that, and that is amazing, so thank you. This is probably a very naive question, but I'd love to hear, I haven't heard anything about the greenhouse, and I know that's not the same as woods, but I'd love your thoughts on that.
And I applaud the idea of a greenhouse, but that's an indoor terrarium-like environment. I've seen climatic and species changes occur over the past 30 years within that site. I just observe. I'm an amateur observer. Like I said, I'm a theologian. And I'm curious as to how middle schoolers might get involved with watching their climate change, and sometimes it's fairly dramatic and fairly quick, how they might get themselves involved and interested in that specific topic. I'm guessing you would be unique as a school, as a middle school. And I'm guessing that you can pull in the AMC and other private organizations to say, oh, look what we're doing. How can we make this work? I don't think about it.
Mr. Richard's going to be out developing the new curriculum.
Whoever that is.
There's your job.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Russell?
Charlie Russell, Concord, New Hampshire. Nice to see you saving some of the best for the last. So I remember an old Jack Webb thing. He used to say, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So 900-seat auditorium, that's twice the size of this. Twice the size of this. That's 3/4 the size of Capitol Center for the Arts. Mr. Close, if there's a backstage problem here, let's renovate out back. We don't go build a 900-seat facility across town where everybody's going to have to get in their car and drive there to see performances like I did to come here and see Mamma Mia. The other thing is the volume. Concord Community Players, they run 3 or 4 shows. You don't build it big enough for one show. You schedule it, and if you get that much of a demand. So I called the Bow middle school principal, had a nice conversation with him. He doesn't have no auditorium in the Bow Middle School, no stage. They have a gym, grades 5 to 8, 530 students. The arts to see their children or their musician children at the end of the year. Well, Concord High hockey parents play, football parents play, a lot of people pay. So the 900-seat auditorium at the middle school would cost $6 million, 4.5% per annum. That's over $10 million, over 30 years. We're going to pay, Concord citizens are going to pay over $325,000 a year for 30 years. So some parents who have already given lessons to their kids and had music instruments don't have to pay to go to see their year-end concert. People pay for entertainment. You know, you pay to park, you do a lot of things. So obviously I'm against the 900-seat auditorium, and it's not been voted on. Somebody said they're looking at a smaller one, but I question that as well. The sports fields, there's a lot of sports fields around town. If you go on GPS, you can see the satellite view, and a lot of sports fields. You got Rollins Park, you got Martin Field, which isn't too far away from the present site. You can get over. I always see when I'm over around the Memorial Field, I see them run the kids over there doing their activities. So, but you know, buildings, fields, you know, you're in the school business. Concord Parks and Recs, parks. They build parks, you build schools. Let's sit down, and if you're going to renovate or redo, or you're talking about upgrading Memorial Field, again, why are we duplicating things? Concord taxpayers no longer have the luxury to pay for multiple facilities. Rent the Capitol Center for the Arts when it's needed. Schedule better. Oh, it's not available. They book quite a while in ahead. So, learn to schedule better. We're not made of money. I asked a question. I go home through the tech regularly. I see all sorts of vacant soccer fields there. I see weekend soccer tournaments with people from out of town. I see Bishop Brady renting the state fields and others. Let's utilize what we have here. Let's not go out and say, oh, we can do a better job. I asked a question last week about what the cost of the city infrastructure improvements were, and I kind of got one of that old kids games, fish, you got any threes? No, fish. Well, I asked the for the costs that are going to be generated by the school project at Broken Ground on infrastructure for the city. And somebody said, go look at the city infrastructure. I'm not going to go play fish. Our group is looking into that. But these taxpayers and voters, they want to know, $138 million, how much more? Let's see. How about a traffic light? That's a good $250,000 on Curtisville Road and Portsmouth Street. You got 700 people, students, going over to Millbrook and to Broken Ground. You put this unit there, you've got 1,400. You've doubled the load. I stood there one school morning at 7:10, and I watched the cars back all the way down Curtisville Road to Portsmouth Street. I don't know how much they were there. You haven't done your traffic studies. But, somebody said there'll be better emergency access over there. In McKee Square, you got a firehouse. What is it, 8 or 10 blocks down to Rundlet Middle School? How can you build something on the edge of the woods with limited access and say with a straight face, there's better access for emergency facilities? The roads aren't set well over there. And the other thing, which, not to make it personal, but some of you were elected with less than 700 votes the first time you ran in District A. And there were probably 10,000 people that could have voted in that, which meant 15% voted. 8,500 people stayed home. So if you got 700 votes to get elected, there wasn't a magical mandate and a beam from above that gave you this wisdom. You represent these people. The Constitution of New Hampshire says you're accountable to the people. Jim, you're worried about the people that didn't show up on December 6th. I worried about the people that didn't show up and vote for you and some of the others at these elections when only 15%. These are the people in New Hampshire. These are the people of Concord, and they want accountability. They don't want games. They don't want a $3.7 million outdoor ramp that some architect from Boston decides we can get a certain percentage on this in construction. They don't need a $9 million. I'm done, thank you.
The ramp actually came from people in our community who came to one of our meetings and said, we would like you to look at accessibility options.
Mr. Russell, it's not difficult to stand up there and have a temper tantrum at us. We have been listening to people, we have been working with people, and we are doing the very best we can. And it does not help in any way for you to get up there and vent your frustrations the way you're doing it.
I'm sorry. I speak for the community. That's not a temper tantrum.
That's not what I've heard
We're looking for
tonight.
answers. If you don't have answers, then you have things to hide. Tell the truth to the people. Don't say, go look for the CIP.
We have had answers
Thank
tonight,
you.
and you're not listening to the people that are here because they aren't agreeing with you tonight.
Okay, let's.
So just to move on, but, thank you, Mr. Russell. Yes, I was reelected multiple times. I have been on this board for over 10 years. I go door to door when I campaign. I talk to all the people. I'm not quite sure how many times you have been elected or what position you hold right now, other than just voicing your opinion. I appreciate your opinion, but What will the cost be? There's going to be needed the improvements at that go on the east side for sewer and water that the city has to do. They are absolutely going to have to do them if we build at broken ground. And you know what? They are absolutely going to have to do that. Just like a roundabout at McKee Square should be included in the runlet cost, since that's where our kids have to go. That's actually within the walking distance not only of the middle school, but of the elementary school. There are a lot of ways you can compare the dollars one way or the other. We have done our best to compare them fairly, to compare them conservatively, and compare them with the interests of the Concord taxpayer and the Concord student. So thank you very much.
We've got about 10 more minutes, so time for 2 or 3 quick questions, depending on who's asking the questions. Mr. And you can sign in after you speak, if we can get him another piece of paper or a pen.
I'm sorry, I arrived late and I
That's
didn't know
okay.
where to sign in.
Why don't you just speak and then you can sign in after.
Good evening, school board members, and thank you for this hearing. My name is Mark Ruvalis. I'm a resident of Concord, lived here over 30 years, raised my family here, educated them through the public schools. My wife was a teacher in the public schools for a time. I'm a big supporter of the public schools. I participated early on when the board offered tours of Runlet at the time when it was deciding, are we going to renovate or build a new school? And at the time, if my recollection serves me, and I went back to your website to see if I could find these numbers, there were 3 estimates given. There was a low, medium, high, 70, 80, and 90 million, which to my mind at the time was basically the same estimate. It wasn't really a choice, but the low was doing limited work. The high was a new school. I have to say that I was appalled to read in the paper the estimates that were provided to this community for a new school. I don't care where you put it. 136 to 166 million is inappropriate and never should have been presented to this community, period. What should have happened is you should have taken that information, and I just want to back up one other thing. When we attended the meeting years ago, and I can't even tell you pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, okay, it's all a fog. I won't say
think it was 2016, 17 is when those began.
So it's
Yeah.
a lot. I realize it was some time ago, but the comments that were made by board members is, don't worry, you'll have an opportunity to comment on what the estimates are going to be. And I just know, having done projects, having worked for nonprofit boards when we've had to consider what we could and should do to build a new facility, renovate an old one, sell this, buy that, all that sort of thing. This doesn't pass the reasonableness test. And why do I say that? I was reading in the Union Leader, Nashua just completed a middle school plan for a new middle school for $92 million. And it renovated 2 other schools for an additional $30 to $40 million for a total of 130 something. I'm thinking, okay, sure, they started different time, but I have a hard time believing. I work with engineers, and no disrespect to any of the engineers here, but you can see it in the materials that are on the website. There's just an approach here that keeps going. We estimate 100% plus or minus. We estimate this, we estimate that. There's never hard thinking about the choices that have to be made to get this down into a more reasonable level. And I submit to you that almost anything in excess of $100 million, not accounting, I don't care what the state puts in, because it's all the same money. And I'm in favor of renovation. I know, or I'm in favor of upgrading our middle school facilities. How you do it is your job. And I don't think, and this isn't a personal attack, it's my objective opinion, or my subjective opinion, that you haven't pushed your engineers hard enough to go back to the drawing board and say, we've got to do better. And that's what needs to happen here. You're making decisions. I can't talk about, 900-seat auditoriums versus that, but I hear that. And the information just talked about, hey, I've known Clint close. Our kids graduated together. We've known each other for a long time. He does great stuff. But what are we possibly thinking? And why would something like that be presented? It's not, and what I'd say is, again, the engineers haven't done enough hard thinking to put something together, and I encourage you to force them to do it. It's not your job to do it, okay? And I can't speak to, I think talking about 1 field, 5 fields, those are rounding errors, given the numbers that you have. And you need to go back to the drawing board and redo what you're doing. Thank you very much.
So thank you. Just to respond to a couple of things, you may not have been arrived, but if you get a copy of the packet, and there is actually a comparison of the differences between this project and Nashua, including that they went locked in before COVID. In addition to the architects and their firms, we hired an independent company, Harvey, to work with us on cost estimates, and we have a building committee that includes several people in the construction industry who are citizens and taxpayers in Concord and have no skin in the game. They're not bidding on these projects, they're paying the bills, including a gentleman who has worked for a number of companies and the city as a cost estimator. So we are continuing to work to dig into the numbers. My understanding of some of the numbers from the original Runlet discussions were, besides the fact that we're now talking probably 10 years for construction costs by the time this project reaches its conclusion, is that only included the actual building cost and didn't include site work, architecture fees, and things like that. Just to add a little background. Anybody else?
I think some of those earlier numbers were construction costs. They weren't project costs. So project cost includes all of the costs related to the project.
Don't misunderstand me. I realize 10 years have passed. However, and I appreciate that you brought in other people. What I'm just saying to you is, regardless, go back and say, give them a number and say, what can you build me for this?
And we are working on, and that is part of this process, is setting the maximum cost for this project.
Here's the problem. We're 10 years into this process, and we're doing it backwards. We've made all these critical decisions, where we go, how we do it, without having a better understanding of what the ultimate cost is going to be. And now I feel like, it's like the end of one of the Batman movies or the Dark Knight. Okay, the train's coming down the track, and is he going to be able to stop it? No, of course not. But you have to. You have to reconsider where you are, because all the good things that you want to do, and there's some great ideas here, are going to go by the wayside if the tax burden is so dramatic in this city, across the city. And whether we're talking about, well, it's the city's responsibility to put in water, I don't care. I'm paying for it one way or another. And I'm happy to do that, but I am concerned, and the people that I've talked to about this, okay, at a casual level, I'm concerned that you're losing support that you need for a new facility. And you don't want to be, if you're losing people like me, it's not a good sign for you. And right now, I can tell you that I am not in favor of the project as currently contemplated at all. I am in favor of a project, not this one. Thank you very much.
Is it okay if I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you for your vulnerability and being willing to share the things that you're concerned about with this project. I'm grateful for everyone's willingness to come and stand and speak in front of this board. And I mentioned something at our last Q&A that I feel is relevant to bring up at this point, and someone who spoke earlier alluded to it. We have a completely upside down taxation system in order to support our children's education in our state. We spend the most per capita of any state in the country, but our state provides the least support of any state in the nation. This is a huge issue. It's a disproportionate burden on homeowners. It is a disproportionate burden on every single person in this audience and every single person sitting at these tables. We are all struggling mightily. We had an opportunity for expanded adequacy contributions from the state this year. It was a meager $300 per student, but it's it's an improvement in the right direction. And our Senate failed us and tanked that bill. And some of them, who we believe were pro-public school, said, we don't really need that right now. We are all suffering at the hands of a legislature that refuses to do its job despite 30 years of the court system saying you are negligent of up to $500 million per year for our public school system. And it puts us all into these situations where we're frustrated, we're scared about losing our homes, about being able to pay for groceries. That is not our fault, right? That's the fault of our elected officials not listening to our concerns and our needs and not doing their jobs. So I think it's important for us to remember that a lot of this burden that we're all carrying and is causing a lot of anxiety can be resolved by our state government, but they choose not to do it. So with this energy and this anxiety, I ask folks to please, this same energy, please direct it at your elected representatives and tell them to do their jobs and adequately fund public education in our state. Concord is not the city with the most hard up situation in this state right now. There are plenty of communities that are struggling to keep even just keeping schools open where children need them. We are looking at a situation that could potentially create ghost towns outside of dynamic municipalities like Concord or Manchester or Nashua. We really need to take a step back and look at the whole picture for a moment and see the ways in which this untenable situation has been spiraling out of control and putting community members at odds against each other. That's not to take the onus off of us. We do have a fiscal responsibility to this community. I know I feel it. I want to keep my house. I want my kids to be able to go to school here. I love this district. I love it so much. I am voluntarily giving my time to sit in these meetings and to respond to constituents. So we do have a fiduciary responsibility to the community, which we all take very seriously, because those tax increases, I'm going to pay them too. And I don't think it's fair that we're put all into this situation where we have to battle against each other through this fear of being able to survive. It's not okay, and I want to acknowledge that your feelings about taxation are very real and very justified, and there is a place where we can direct this energy, and it's at the State House.
I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm not worried about losing my house. I'm not in that boat. Okay, I recognize it. But everything you said has been the way it's been in this state my entire life, and I've lived here all except for a few years of college and other education. We know it. And even if I agree with you 100%, it doesn't change the fact that you have to live within that system until it's changed. And that's what you have to do. That's why you need to reevaluate. Thank you. I won't come back up again, I promise.
Can I respond to that? Mr. Croto, I think you're the last of the evening.
Can I just actually respond to
Yeah,
that real
go
quick?
ahead.
I just wanted to respond really quickly about the number. I had originally been very nervous about the design estimate with everything in the kitchen sink, right? Like everything that we could possibly have. And I thought, my God, we're just going to come out with another really big number, and it's going to look like the old big number. And we can't ask the community, we can't put the high point out there. It's just going to be too overwhelming. But then I had conversations about it with my board members, and it's what the community has asked for. They've asked for an auditorium. They've asked for a wood shop. They've asked for a makerspace. They've asked for all these things, and to cut those out of the estimate before we've even seen them disregards those asks. So I can appreciate that we can now see the cost breakdown of the individual asks from the community about the school. The number is still very high. Even the low of our cap worries me greatly. But I also was afraid of that initial number, and I'm glad now that we can see what the different elements are and the pricing is for each of those elements.
Mr. Cardo.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. So I have a question for the architects and maybe Mr. Kelly. From the time that this board and this community gets a final price to the time that the building gets built, is there wiggle room in there, or is there a guaranteed price? Because we all know that we're facing increases in prices virtually weekly sometimes. So how do we answer that to this public right now?
Okay, I can start, and then I'll have you add the second part to it. So once the community sets if you want to say a max cap on your range, or if you say this is the architects by contract, we will design to that budget. So at every estimate, if it comes in a little bit over, we will find ways to get back to that budget. So it will never go forward beyond that cap in terms of the design. Once we're done with the design, this is when Keith will come in and he can talk a little bit more about the guaranteed maximum price and how that works with the construction manager. But they will bid the job from there, because we're designing based on estimates, and then it gets bid, and then the number comes in, and Keith can talk a little bit about that.
So our responsibility as pre-construction managers for the community is that we'll provide budget estimates. We just provided our first based on the schematic design. We'll provide another estimate at design development, which is the next phase of the design development, appropriately named. And then construction documents are issued for bidding. And as Bobby had indicated, the purpose of what we're going through now is to find out what that top limit is, the cap as it's often referred to. They're responsible for designing to it, and we're responsible for giving you real-time market data to tell you that we're going to get there. At each one of those phases, and we've already started doing this, is we're going to generate value engineering and value management tactics to establish and create and find opportunities to make sure that we're not going over that cap. And that's what we'll manage over the next year and a half on your behalf, so that when we get to a point, as referenced to guaranteed maximum prices, GMP is the acronym for it, that's the basis of the AIA contract that we utilize as construction managers. And that assigns a value to the project, and we go to contract for that, should we get to that point. And it will not be higher than that unless the scope of the project changes. So that's what's going to happen over this next period of pre-construction time frame. And that's how we guarantee that we're going to meet the demands of the community and then execute upon those.
Thank you. So this next part, full disclosure, I sat on that side of the table in December. I was one of the folks that voted for the broken ground site. You're welcome to talk to me on my way out of here anytime you want. And I'm also the Concord School Board Treasurer right now, but neither of those things has anything to do with what I'm about to say. And that is, the tenor of this meeting tonight is so much better than it has been in the past, where board members, myself included, sat up there, listened, never responded. Tonight you responded. You responded to folks. Maybe they didn't hear everything they wanted to hear, but you responded to folks tonight, and I think that's a great beginning, and I applaud the board for that. Thank you.
Thank you. It's after 8 o'clock, so please keep it brief, and you are the last person.
Thank you. I have two questions. My first is, back when the proposal was to build the new middle school on Clinton Street, there was a lot of talk about the advantages for middle schoolers of being within walking distance from the high school for both athletic and academic purposes. This potential for collaboration, I recall, was a selling point, and understandably. I'm also aware that in the school year that just ended, each 8th grade cluster walked up to the high school for transition meetings. The multi-language learners, in fact, made the trip a couple of times. The entire 7th grade walked to the State House, but for one cluster that was bused because of a student that was unable to walk. And I think the 6th grade made the trip on foot to either the Capitol Center of the Arts or Red River Theater. So my question is, have we decided that proximity between middle and high school is no longer something to be desired, or will we be doing the same thing with both the high school and downtown by using school buses instead?
Hastings.
For me personally, and we are all only just one member of the board, the proximity would have been wonderful. The Center Point property was much bigger and would have allowed us to build the school that we would like to build now and that we think the students need now. I've lost my train of thought, I'm sorry, I'm tired.
I think I will add that for myself that, yes, that would have been a selling point. We never, but then we were comparing two different properties. And so we had to go weigh the options there. There are, now the students at Runlet can go walk the trails, which there will still be a lot of. So there's another advantage to it as well. And the students from Broken Ground can walk over for their transition meetings instead of being bused. So, you know, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
And I guess what I was going to say was that, yeah, those are 7 or 8 trips that the classes took in a year, and the proximity is wonderful. I wish we were able to do that. It's not an option, and for the students for the rest of the 183 days that they're in school, would have a much better school experience on the Broken Ground property.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question. I want to share an observation, and there's kind of a question embedded in this. One of the remarks I've heard a couple of times in defense of building in East Concord involves equity for our new American population. Students who have come here by way of refugee resettlement or immigration who largely live on the Heights. I cannot speak for this community, but I can share some of my own experience in working with these students and their families. For years, I've worked in Broken Ground Summer Enrichment Program and taken my students downtown on field trips. We've had them do, you know, what's your favorite bagel surveys at the Works to work on language skills, and participate in scavenger hunts when they have to find something in a shop window and then go inside and ask about the price. Each year, I've had students ask, are you sure it's okay for us to look in the window? And are we really allowed to go inside there, or will we get in trouble? Now, some of these children were brand new to our community, so some trepidation about that might be understandable, but many, many had been here since Head Start. This shapes my feelings about equity. Many of us would agree that a downtown can and should be a vibrant part of our community. In addition, in Concord, it's the seat of governance. What these experiences taught me, and I hope will help you to understand, is that many of my students did not feel like our downtown was their downtown. Sequestering them in the same East Concord neighborhood for kindergarten through 8th grade seems to me like the reverse of equity. It seems like inadvertent segregation, regardless of the positive intentions. I know that I'm not actually asking a question here, but I would like your thoughts on this.
Can I jump in?
Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the work that you do with the multi-language learner community at Broken Ground. You've been an incredible part of that community, and your retirement is going to be a real loss to the whole district. So thank you for dedicating your career to that work. I think it is wise to acknowledge that the zoning in our community for a very long time has restricted robust and viable economic development on the east side of town. So the community, and one of the things that I like to talk about when we talk about neighborhood makeups in communities and the way that that neighborhood makeup affects neighborhood schooling is the fact that there was redlining in New Hampshire fairly actively for many, many decades. Manchester is a good example of the only cities that saved their redlining maps are cities that had over 40,000 people at the time that those laws were enacted. So Manchester has their redlining maps still available. And if you lay that map over the current city makeup, it's verbatim. The ripples of all of those effects continue to last within communities. You can absolutely see that in Concord as well, the way we choose to zone, the way that where we choose to live and how much we deem is appropriate for a certain neighborhood for rental or housing costs. All of that is historic ripple effects when it comes to redlining laws. So the east side traditionally has been zoned not for walkable neighborhoods, just for car dealerships and fast food restaurants. But the downtown, the desirable side of the city, has had more than ample accommodations. So we're seeing this historic effect in our community to this day. I do not see an issue with taking one citywide school and appropriating it to the east side, where that not only encourages mindful future development to create a better side of town for all of the people that live there, but it also creates equity around busing. There's a whole half of the city that has to be bused for 8 of the 12 years of their education to get to a citywide school. And a welcoming downtown, I agree with you. It can be very intimidating in New Hampshire. I have lots of BIPOC friends and family who choose to no longer live here because New Hampshire is not always a safe place for people who are different. That's a cultural responsibility of all of us that live here. If we want those kiddos to feel welcome, we need to be the DEIJ directors of our community. And we need to be ready to welcome those kiddos in all spaces. So the location of a school, I believe, is not going to change how those kids feel about if they're welcomed downtown. Does that make sense?
I think that we could save that.
We could
for
have a long
personal
discussion.
conversation later, but I think the other issue is that those kids are still going to be bused. I mean, we've had that said here because of the roads, because of the overpass. The same population we're talking about are still going to be bused for all of those years. So I'll just have one closing statement, which will be by all means.
No closing statements.
Well, no, I think I will anyway. And I'm sorry, Pam. I just feel like it's almost, I so appreciate, my closing statement is really one of gratitude, not just for you, but for everybody that came here tonight, because I feel like to every one of us, we would probably certainly have chosen to do something else rather than come here if it weren't out of a sense of community responsibility. So I think it's okay that I say that, right?
It is, but I also want to, we told people we'd try and get them out by 8, so I want to be respectful of that as well for people who may be paying babysitters or, have other things to do in this bombing evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. The board will be meeting with the building committee on Thursday to continue to work on the estimates. We have a tentative work session scheduled on July 8th for just the board. There will be a public hearing on July 15th. And if necessary, the board vote will be that evening or July 17th on the maximum price for the project. We have received some questions from community members that we are going to post the answers to in our frequently asked questions on the middle school project website. Thank you all very much for coming. Please feel free to email any additional questions or thoughts to concordinfo@sau8.org or to school board members individually. We will get the questions that you email to the info site. Thank you.